Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to Going Virtual with Kate. I'm so glad you joined us again today. I, as always, am Kate coming to you from Baltimore. Please make sure you let me know where you're coming from and also, as always, what you're doing to keep busy during isolation. While you're doing that and while you're commenting and joining us, I want to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today, Tracy King from Inspire Ed. Welcome.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Doing good.
Good. So where are you joining us from?
Minneapolis.
Great. How is things there? How are you doing?
Things are good. Things are, locked down, but all is well. We're keeping super busy over here. A lot of learning design, a lot of converting in-person programs to virtual and online learning programs, and a lot of fun content and good stuff.
Well, I'm really glad that you were able to carve out some time for us. I mean, I know that it is really busy for our industry right now. And so your expertise is really valuable, especially for those that are going to be joining us today. So thank you so much for joining.
Of course.
As we are always going to go through things, just go ahead and make sure you comment below. Let us know where you're coming from, what questions you have. And if there are topics that we haven't covered in this series so far, let us know so we can address those for you. But without any further ado, Tracy, let's just go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's just talk about, we're going to talk about engagement and how to keep these learners engaged in a virtual format, which I think is something that everyone is struggling with, whether they've done it before or this is a brand new concept to them. So for a session, how long should a normal session go? I think that's the first question that we should ask.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that's the first question they ask. And the question before that is, what do we want to accomplish? And so once we understand what outcomes we have for whatever type of event or learning experience that we want to engage learners in, then we can survey what are our opportunities now in the online space. Since we know that virtual conferencing and virtual training isn't a one-to-one correspondence to location-based learning, we have an entirely new toolkit of choices that we can pull from. And so first getting in touch with what those outcomes are, then we can select what the best formats and methods are, and then we can start talking about the length. And so when I'm working with clients on the length of sessions, once we've decided that presentations are the best way to go for the outcomes at hand, I recommend a few things. One is shorter but connected content. So shorter sessions that are stacked. So instead of one long marathon session, we can break that up and then stack the learning. So it's a progression. And if another way to stack it, if it's not a progression of content, more short form learning, then at least having some content weaving in between can be really engaging for a shorter format. If we are going to select a longer format, then I recommend that there be some breaks. And breaks including like stepping away from the computer breaks versus doing email breaks, because we need breaks from just the screen, right? And then of course, considering in addition to session blocks, break blocks. So it's different than passing time. It's, in between sessions at a location-based event. So thinking about those big refreshing breaths in between blocks of learning and interacting are really, really important when we're structuring a virtual training day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's something that we've been covering every single one of these episodes is the importance of a break. Virtual burnout is such a thing. And, even though you're on the computer and it's just a click to go to the next one, you need to build in time for what you would build in a time normally in a normal conference scenario. Bio breaks, your email checking, like you said, just a breather, food that people got to eat.
Right. I mean, so often, when we're in place-based learning, we understand the norms are set that we can get up, we can stand against the wall, we can go to the back of the room and get a drink of water, we can step out to go to the bathroom or take a call or go to a different session, but a lot of people don't really know what the norms are in this space. And so they feel like they have to be glued to the screen. So it's just a human kindness to assemble agendas, assemble our days with those types of breaks and stretches in mind.
Yeah, and a refreshed learner is an engaged learner, so we want to make sure they're refreshed.
Yeah, keep those brains fresh.
Absolutely. So what is your 10 by 10 rule? I know that you have that. So can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah, so my 10 by 10 rule is a great entry practice for those who are presenting virtually and who either are new or new-ish to virtual presenting. And it asks us to take a look at our content from the lens of breaking it up into chunks of 10 minutes of presentation paired with 10 minutes of interaction. And now those minute lengths can of course change depending on the type of content we're really digging into, but really the key is that we shouldn't wait until the very end of the session for Q&A. We should be interspersing interaction throughout the content. So there's opportunity to reflect together, to solve problems, to start to apply content, to chat about how it could be adapted to our context of practice, all of those things, so that we're actually facilitating learning versus just presenting information, which can be really tough in this medium.
Absolutely, which is a natural segue. Don't forget, everybody, to go ahead and comment below if you do have any questions or anything that you want us to touch on. We really do like having this interactive. You can also email marketing@compartners.com. We are always monitoring that so that we can answer your questions if you're not comfortable throwing that chat out there onto the Facebook Live. So let's just kind of jump gears a little bit and go into creativity. I know last week we talked to Camp No Limits, which they did some really interesting and new, innovative, interactive ways of bringing their campers who are kids into this virtual environment. So we say creativity is key for our clients. So can you tell us some other ways to include interactivity in your sessions?
Yeah, for sure. So it all begins with setting an expectation that this is a collaborative and interactive space. And that, starts with how we communicate about the event, how we help to prime our participants to engage in the event, orienting them to all of the tools and all of the different ways that we will be engaging together so that they know what the room set is. When we walk into a room set at a conference, we can see if there are rows of chairs tightly packed. We can see if there are rounds, if those rounds are set all the way around or if they're, set halfway around. We can see if there are multiple sets like rounds and, cocktail tables in the back. And depending on how a room is set, we can tell what the interaction level is going to be. But often when people are stepping into a virtual learning space, they can't see that set. And so we have to prime learners to understand what are the expectations going to be and how are all of the ways that we can engage together. And then it's really important, we touch on this just briefly, but to really be human. In this space, it can be cold if we're not using it as a collaborative space or people have baggage of those types of experiences. So, camera on when you can, just to show the warmth and expression and humor of, your face and your nonverbal communication. Considering human needs when sitting in front of a computer. Tell people when we break out that we want you to have a standing meeting, right? Or, give them an opportunity to stand in front of their cameras or have, different types of movement breaks. So, just thinking about the human needs of our learners in that space. And then, when we're thinking about that 10 by 10 rule, really pairing that content with the types of interactions that are going to move the ball forward for our learners, because we know they want to be or do something new or different when they leave. That's why they choose to learn with us. And so, look at all the interaction capabilities available to you in your platform. Sometimes there are opportunities to pair platforms so that there are offline ways to continue to engage together with the people that we meet in the virtual space. So there's a lot of ways that we can connect in meaningfully around the content, but with each other in these learning spaces.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I think something that I always did as an event planner when planning the events and not necessarily the content, but the natural flow and the environment was think about how I would respond to a certain item and making those natural connections of just bumping into someone in the hallway. Well, how can we do that online and how can we do that virtually? And there's a lot of ways of doing that. Just turning your camera on earlier does allow for that. I help with these sessions where they're getting ready and just having their camera on a little bit earlier, they kind of get to talk a little bit and they're like, oh, before we get to start, and they chat about things. And that's a really great way of connecting your audience and your presenters.
Yeah, and we do that when we step into a physical session room too. It's like say hello to the people at the table, say hello sometimes to the speaker. They might wander around the room, and it's a great way to warm up the space. It's also important to think about another model that I use is the BDA model for event design, before, during, and after. It's a way to really amplify the impact of what you're preparing. So you're thinking about how you can create anticipation for what's going to happen when we get together. You know, what are the things that we can offer, pieces of information, downloadables, fun little, Quizlets, things like that before we get together. Thinking about all of the fun ways that we'll interact around the content when we are together. And then, what tools or additional touch points will we offer after the event, or even conversation spaces as our learners are beginning to apply with what they learned when we were together, so that conversation can continue. And the beautiful thing about the virtual training space is that since we're online, we can continue to offer additional digital touch points. So we don't have to think in a once and done event mindset anymore. We have an expansive opportunity to extend the learning, months after a scheduled event.
Yeah. For comm partners, we obviously have a couple different tools available to us that we use a lot for engagement. Just our Elevate site in itself, you have so many options to engage those learners before they even enter the session. You can have a welcome video, just letting people know that you're there and humanizing it a little bit again.
Mm-hmm.
You can do discussion boards where they can talk before, after, during these sessions and collaborate and things like that. You can also use the actual in meeting features that we have, like the chats and the whiteboards and the polling questions. All of those, while they seem very rudimentary sometimes, they create engagement. And that's the whole goal, right? Is to have these learners interact with you as the presenter and get something out of your session.
Yeah, it's all about, how we're using those tools to benefit the goal that the learner walks into that session room with, right? And so, polls are great from a learner perspective because they want to know what everyone else thinks without having to extend themselves to ask. Quiz questions are great because without being called out, like with a hand raise, they can, receive coaching feedback on why the correct answers are correct and the incorrect answers are not. When we are using the whiteboard, it's an amazing collaborative space that we can just engage in some play, which a lot of people don't associate with virtual training, but we have that capability. It's built for it. It's built for interaction. And so if we just use those tools, it just becomes a really fun place to learn and connect.
Absolutely. One of my favorite features that we had before, but we've really stepped up since COVID, was our virtual exhibit halls. And they've been used for, sponsors, for exhibitors, but it's a great way to network virtually. I mean, we're separated. That's the whole point of social distancing, is we're not together. So these exhibit halls are great spaces for, the resources, getting those resources to the attendees. You can have those chats, discussion boards, things like that. There can be, other activities, like one of our clients is suggesting doing a website scavenger hunt. So, creating that so you have the attendees going through the site, just creating some kind of interaction. I mean, again, as we said before, you got to get creative, but it's not impossible.
Absolutely. It's not impossible. And I love pairing the synchronous and the asynchronous components. Because how we interact with screens, we have so many tabs open. I'm not going to show you how many tabs I have open. Multiple screens on our desk. This is how we function in this space. I mean, we're together virtually, but we're also in this physical space. We're in a workspace. And so utilizing that's not something that we have in a physical classroom. People aren't at their desks with all their tools. And so it's an optimum time to introduce practice, because we're in the context of our workspace. And so we have an opportunity to really see what it feels like to try on some of the new skills and things that we're learning in the virtual training space.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know something that I'm sure you've attended many of them. I know I've attended many of them, virtual happy hours. I think that everyone's doing it. Comm Partners is doing, one with the staff, and I know every conference that we're doing has them. So there's ways of leveraging, though, a happy hour where it's not just people all yelling into a Zoom call, and that that could be specific sessions for specific jobs or titles, or maybe a discussion-based happy hour. Can you talk about maybe some of your ideas for virtual happy hours?
Yeah, so I've seen some of those things. I know some people are utilizing virtual games, trivia games, and I want to use Jackbox, TV so bad. Right. But playing together, there is a lot, things that we could do that. I would love to know who is venturing out into the virtual happy hour space. I've seen some demos of it. I know of a conference that just happened where they demoed the space and then everyone went to a virtual happy hour. They had an avatar. They were in a created space. San Francisco was outside the window. There were internal fireworks. There were Easter eggs hidden for participants to find, and a lot of fun different ways to interact in the space. Instead of wearing a name badge, everyone's name is over their head because you're in a virtual reality environment. I would love to see more of that become accessible. I think that would be really fun. But when I talk to my clients and colleagues about networking in virtual events, I want to take a step back and have a conversation about how we often separate education and networking in our minds, because at so many events, there's the education piece where we sit and we listen to a presentation, and then there's the going out in the hallways and going to the parties and processing out loud. But really, that's not optimal. What should happen is that processing should begin in the classroom. And so if we're committed to offering engaging and interactive learning, that's an opportunity for us to begin meeting the people that we want to have a deeper conversation with in those conversation spaces, whether they be a happy hour or different types of virtual conversation spaces. Because when we think about it, why do we network? We want to find colleagues with similar interests and goals, people who are solving the problems we're solving, potential mentors, maybe industry leaders we want to have informational interviews with. We might be looking for clients. We might be looking for potential partners, and we can find those people in places where we're trying to solve our problems because attending sessions that we're interested in that are aligned with our goals. We're already gathering together. And so I kind of joke that, if we allow that interaction to happen, that peer processing and that co-creation happen in the education space, we might not need as much like liquid courage when we get to the happy hours, because we'll already be introduced. It's already a warmed conversation, and we have a shared experience that we can, jump into a conversation from, versus trying to develop these cold connections at networking events. And so really would love to see more of that partnered. And if we prime learners as they're attending our events that, look, this is a space where you're going to meet people that have shared goals, could be your future friends, could be your future employer, your future mentor. So keep a watch for those people, because we're going to be interacting in this space. And then after these sessions, here are all of the different ways that you can connect with them in our networking events, but also other, asynchronous types of networking opportunities. Like you can connect on LinkedIn, and you can have a conversation in our app. You can connect in our Slack channel and our bulletin, our boards or wherever, so that people are primed to seek out those relationships that are established when we're creating together in the classrooms. I would love to see more of that happen, and just take some of the fear out of, how do I do this networking thing? It was uncomfortable at a party, and now I'm in a foreign environment, because you have a shared experience that you can kick off that conversation with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that really stood out to me from talking to Camp No Limits last week was that the children didn't seem to have that much of an issue of that fear, because they were more willing and more open to try these new things. And I think sometimes we get in our own way because we're so used to that strict way of doing the conferences. You go to the sessions, you go to the parties, that's how you do things. And I think, if we can kind of think like a kid maybe and just get excited about the new features. I mean, we're going to be doing this for a little while, so let's get used to it, and then let's get innovative.
For sure. We have to have fun with it. And I think some of that anxiety also stems from wanting to continue to appear as a professional in this space. And, we're still in kind of a phase where people are having funky, Zoom backdrops in their calls and stuff. And so, but even when we're in those cocktail party situations, it's like we want to maintain a certain presence, because maybe that person could introduce us to a person who will introduce us to a person who will hire us, right? And so there's that to work through as well. But if we're already developing relationships around solving problems in our work and industry, then it's easy to make those connections in our conversation spaces.
Absolutely. Well, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and submit it. Tech team, if you guys can go ahead and send me any questions that we've got. Tracy, was there any, final notes or any tips that you guys want to throw before I see if there's any questions?
Yeah, I guess the key is engagement isn't really a tip or a trick or a certain feature. It's really designing an experience that's in alignment where our learners want to go. They come to us because they know that we can help them be or do something new or different or better. And that they know that they can connect with others who are also on that journey. So it's really about forging a way to facilitate those meaningful conversations around content and goals so that we can, all be in this boat and row it together.
Awesome. Yeah, we actually got a couple questions here. So what can speakers and moderators do during a presentation to keep the learners engaged? I mean, I think we kind of talked about this a lot, but, are there any like tried and true, this is going to get somebody to engage with you that you can think of?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a presentation I'm delivering tomorrow. So I'm delivering a training to train speakers for delivering virtual learning. It's going to be 60 minutes, and there are 6 interactions in 60 minutes. So we start the session with an interaction. I'm going to have something for everyone to do immediately upon arriving, and that's going to involve getting to know their environment if they're new to the environment we're using. We'll immediately be talking about some pre-work. So there were a couple of reflection questions that were sent to them ahead of time to help prime what the type of problem that we're going to be solving during the session. And so we're going to engage in that through a chat and voice conversation, depending on how the learners feel the most comfortable. In the middle of the session, I have a slide where it talks about this BDA model that I mentioned, and we're going to have a conversation within the context of this particular association and their particular events, what some of the examples of before, during, and after touch points could be. And so we'll be annotating the slide, and the participants will get to vote up with their annotations on the slide. We'll also be conducting a quick breakout group, which will be focused around action steps, but it'll be an opportunity for peers to talk to each other about what was particularly insightful for them that they want to apply. So there's a dual purpose to refine our ideas about what was really intriguing about the training and how to transfer that into really the context of practice. And there's also an accompanying workbook that we created, a really simple tool based on the slide deck itself, inserting some of the prompts, the conversation prompts in it, so that along with the presentation, all of those who are there will be able to have a place to note not only their notes about the presentation, but what they think about it, how they're reflecting upon it, adapting the content, how they want to apply it once they leave. So it's going to be super interactive, but those aren't complex interactions, right? Facilitating discussion, voting up, the things that we've chat about pre-work, and then, discussing it together, having a tiny table talk, which would be, similar to, turn to someone next to you and chat about X, Y, or Z. And so they're all correlates, but we're just using the rich tools that we have in the virtual environment in order to create not only a great conversation, but immediate action when people leave the room.
That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a very engaging session.
It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun.
That's exciting. So the last question we do have, and I personally really like this question. Are there things a learner can do to make their home environment more conducive to learning?
Oh,
isn't that a good?
Yeah, that's great. Well, it starts with a commitment to setting your time and space to be for learning. So it's all about creating an environment. Like if you were going to an in-person session, you would be free of the distractions that we often allow in our space. And similar to if you work in an open office environment versus now you're working at home, your level of focus is typically different because of the types of distractions that can enter into your space. So be thinking about how to protect yourself, whether that's a door that can close, whether that's a curtain partition or a room, partition, or just a conversation with the other people in your house, right? That this is protected space for this amount of time. I even will put calendar invites on my kids' calendars when I need the broadband, right? So that there aren't like complex gaming situations happening while I'm trying to, teach online or connect as a learner. So it's really about setting your table so it can be as free of distractions as possible, protecting your space, being rested, having water, being able to stand and move, knowing you're allowed to do that in this space as you would any other learning space. And come curious, come with a rested, curious brain.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, like I'm in my guest room, not exactly the most professional looking room, but it is the most separated from my life.
Yeah.
So separating myself from everything else going on out in the outside world so that, I don't see the dishes sitting on the counter that I need to go clean or something like that. And then, I think just understanding that we're all in this situation together. Don't be so hard on yourself. I think a lot of people are a little hard on themselves thinking, I gotta, be stapled to this desk right now and tied down to it. And, oh, I'm feeling really unmotivated or whatever it is. Just understand that everyone's going through the same thing. And, as a learner, the lucky thing, as we've said, this stuff is probably going to be accessible to you for a long time because it's all online. So if you need to step away, do it. Take the
Give
5
yourself some grace. Yeah,
just a little bit of leeway there.
for sure. For sure.
Awesome. Well, I don't know that we have any other questions. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really great to see you again, and hopefully it won't be too long before we actually do get to interact again. And stay safe out there.
Yeah, you too. So good to see you.
Bye. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I want to go ahead and just once again, thank you guys for joining me every week, every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do these Facebook Live events or episodes where we can discuss the virtual conferencing hot topics that you have in mind. I am sad to say that next week is going to be our last episode, but you are able to look on demand at all of our previous episodes on the Com Partners Resources website. Next week, we're going to talk about the one thing that I think every single person, every single week has asked us about, and that's exhibit halls. We're going to go in depth a little bit about the virtual exhibit halls, how to create one, what are the tips and tricks we have for you, and what are some things that you can think about as you're developing your virtual conference. So as always, thank you for joining me. Thank you, Tracy King, for joining me. Thank you to my tech team for making this all happen. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.